All right, we are on the train talking about your brain and your hormones and how it's all connected. If you missed part 1 and part 2, check out those videos right here. We are trying to establish this fundamental concept that I've seen in practice over and over again, where it's actually your brain that's heavily involved in what's happening with your hormones and your hormone balance. We spend a lot of time talking about each different hormone pattern and what you can do, and that information is incredibly important. But if we're not looking at this holistically, then I feel like we're missing an opportunity to intervene and jump in way before your hormones crash. So remember, what we are talking about here is the hypothalamus and the pituitary. Sits deep in the brain, signals the rest of the organs exactly what hormones to produce or not produce. Overproduces cortisol if you're super stressed and in an environment that's not working for you, and then in turn crashes your estrogen, your progesterone, your thyroid, and your insulin, leading to insulin resistance, adrenal fatigue, estrogen dominance, all of which we've been talking about on this page. We're actually going to flip that dialogue and treatment plan what you can do to avoid this hormone crash. Or if your hormones have already crashed and you've tried a bunch of stuff, what you might be missing. All right, let's break it down. What is happening to the hypothalamus is it's really presenting as an autoimmune disease, meaning it's inflamed, right? Lots of talk about inflammation, but it's your brain on fire. I talk a lot about inflammation in this particular video. Make sure you check it out if you want to do a deeper dive on that concept. But think about this brain on fire. We've got to cool it down, right? You wouldn't let anything burn forever. So how do we cool down hypothalamic inflammation? How do we reverse this autoimmune disease? I'm going to take you through a step-by-step process to help you reverse inflammation, hypothalamic inflammation in particular, and reestablish a healthy brain hormone connection. It begins with sleep. We know we need deep, consistent sleep, in particular, 90 minutes of REM sleep and 90 minutes of deep sleep. In fact, you want to try to establish a healthy sleep cycle at least 5 nights out of the 7 nights in a given week. I've come from a long history of doing night shifts and flipping my sleep schedule all over the place between having children and working the ER and doing all my crazy stuff. And there was a price to pay, and it was a hormone price. So trying to establish healthy sleep to the best of your ability. Now, some of the things you can do to try to get yourself into a deeper sleep cycle. And by the way, I wear this Oura ring and this stuff works. I can see how if I skip my magnesium, Serenese has about 7 different types of magnesium in it. If I skip my magnesium, my REM sleep goes down. So something as simple as the right magnesium, taking around 200 to 400 milligrams nightly, can help you with sleep. In addition to that, magnolia bark or many of the adrenal adaptogens can also lull you into a deeper sleep state. And then blacking out your room, right? Move the phones out of the way, move and turn off any devices. Ideally, you don't have Wi-Fi in the room because that frequency is being sensed and perceived by the hypothalamus, which is like, wait, it's not really time to rest yet. I need to stay on alert. I'm going to keep overproducing everything. The more you can establish sort of a dark environment for sleep where the body knows it's truly time to rest, then again, you are reversing hypothalamic inflammation. All right, moving on from sleep, where do you go next? The next place to go is, of course, your diet. And I don't want to make diet complicated. I really don't. I know there's so much fatigue on talking about food and diet and what to do and what not to do. We can get into all of that later. But for the purposes of thinking about the hypothalamus as an autoimmune disease, here are your general rules. Number 1, let's get rid of sugar. Because one of the things that happens when the hypothalamus is inflamed, right? Think autoimmune disease, brain's on fire, poosh, fire everywhere, is that blood sugar gets impacted and it creates this feedback loop where you eat more sugar to feel better, but the brain continues to get more inflamed. Then you eat more sugar again and you stay in that cycle over and over again. So removing sugar is a great first step when you're trying to heal this inflammation through diet. A second one is really watching salt. I continue to be shocked with the amount of salt in restaurant foods, even when we're trying to be healthy. I'm feeling it today. We were out last night. My mouth is dry. I can tell. So really watching salt and asking for dressings on the side, condiments on the side, low salt options is a way of indirectly healing your hypothalamus. It keeps hydration where it needs to be. It keeps the electrolyte balance where it's supposed to be as well. And it takes down the burden around cortisol and adrenal issues, which ultimately impact your blood sugar and everything else. While we're talking about blood sugar and blood sugar stability, your diet should be one where you eat consistently. Now, if you're in this situation of hypothalamic inflammation, highly stressed, a lot going on, not sleeping consistently, please do not fast. Fasting impacts your blood sugar even more so and really perpetuates this idea of the brain being on fire. So managing your diet as you're dealing with this particular issue of hypothalamic inflammation involves eating consistently, eating every 4 hours, and then having that 12 hours of gut rest. Ideally, you're getting the right amount of protein in at those 4-hour intervals. We want about 20-ish, 30-ish grams of protein every 4 hours or so because it keeps blood sugar stable. In addition to that, getting the healthy fats and getting a lot of really great plant-based foods that give you the antioxidants, literally nourish and feed your cells, really important in your daily diet. But again, first priority, cutting sugar, reducing salt, then moving into intervals of eating, and then learning to add the protein and some of the healthy fats and stuff like that in. So those are your priorities when you're trying to manage a diet for this particular autoimmune disease. All right, while we're managing blood sugar, I love using berberine. Berberine is an herb. It has so many great benefits to it, everything from helping to manage yeast, to lowering cholesterol, but most importantly, to stabilizing blood sugar. We've literally seen in the exam room, it's fascinating, where an A1C will be well managed, right? Kind of like that 5.2 or a 5.3, but someone forgets their berberine or travels or just falls out of the habit, and all of a sudden my A1Cs get super high. They're now 5.6, 5.7, 5.8, and patients are like, oh, I forgot to take my berberine. So again, love using berberine as sort of a natural alternative to managing blood sugar. If it doesn't work, of course, we move into some of the medication options. Okay, so sleep, diet, blood sugar management. What else can we do? The next part is, how can you bring your hormones into balance, and how can you manage cortisol? So if, for example, you're having a lot of symptoms of PCOS, right? Or you're having a lot of perimenopausal or menopausal symptoms, a hormone balancer, something with maybe maca, saw palmetto in it, choline inositol, hormone helper, has a lot of those ingredients, will help to manage that and indirectly also help you with your sleep. Then managing cortisol is about teaching the body to calm down, right? At the end of the day, this hypothalamic inflammation is from our environment, right? It's from stress, it's from environmental toxins, it's from trauma, both macro and micro traumas, right? Macro traumas are big things that have happened to you, right? You lost a job, maybe you lost somebody, maybe there was a history of abuse or alcoholism. Micro traumas are like the daily picking, right? The poking, like someone's just kind of poking at you constantly. But both of them count when it comes to triggering inflammation. So how do you manage macro and micro traumas? That gets into this idea of bringing cortisol down, having a self-care plan, and really finding the modalities that work for you. If you've had a macro trauma, right, something huge that's happened to you, those emotions and that emotional burden sits with you for years. Some are arguing that it might even be passed down intergenerationally. So those macro traumas should be managed with things like hypnosis, EMDR, counseling, therapy, all of these things where you are processing and trying to put those traumas in a position where they don't trigger chronic inflammation. If it's a micro trauma, a day-to-day kind of thing that you just have to deal with, then that's where exercise, acupuncture, massage, some of those modalities are incredibly helpful. If you've had an injury, maybe you've had a head injury or a big accident, then we love using hyperbaric oxygen to help heal the brain and bring down that hypothalamic inflammation. So again, there's an arc, right, when it comes to treatment planning that begins with what you can do at home, that begins with changing some of your moment-to-moment and daily habits, setting a schedule for sleep and food and movement, adding in a few things that can help you as you're trying to balance hormones and balance cortisol and blood sugar, adding in a few modalities where you may actually have to make an appointment, but they're helping you heal your brain. It's all possible. You just have to be strategic and diligent, but understanding the brain hormone connection is something that'll serve you well into every decade of your life, no matter where you are when you enter this video. All right, I post new videos every week. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you are confused about this brain hormone connection, please watch part 1 and part 2, and this is part 3. All right, I'll see you guys soon.